Welcome to the London Commercial Offices podcast with me, your host, Steve Berridge, Managing Director at Fidgens Cost Management. This is a podcast where we share the stories, career paths, lessons and insights from some of the industry's most influential people. Anything contained within our podcast should not be considered professional advice, and if you haven't done so already, please hit the subscribe or follow buttons to ensure you don't miss any of the amazing guests we've got coming up. It also really helps us grow the show. Thanks. Today I'm joined by Zac Goodman, founder and CEO of TSP. TSP is a multi-award-winning investment and asset management firm built around the three pillars of talent, sustainability and partnership. A well-known personality across social media with his insightful quotes and infographics. Zac, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Nice to see you, Steve.
Lots to talk about today around TSP, your B Corp journey and plans for the future. But as you know from previous episodes, we like to start right back at the beginning to give the audience a flavour of you as a person and where you've come from and the journey that you've been on. So talk to me about a young Zac. Were you destined to be an entrepreneur from a very young age?
I think so. I was always the kid selling you something at school, whether it was bubble gum or clothing, or when I got into my teens, mini disc players, CD players. I was running paper rounds and doing the car washing business in the local area. We didn't have it very easy financially when I was growing up. You kind of, if you wanted something in my family, like the expectation was you would go out and earn some money to go and get sort of the extras in life, you know, whether it was a Game Boy or a CD player or...
You are dating yourself now, Game Boy.
Nike Airs was the big thing, obviously, as well. You wanted to get those trainers with the bubble in the bottom. So yeah, I think so. I'm not sure if I was destined or born to be an entrepreneur, but I certainly think my environment and my circumstances sort of crafted me into being entrepreneurial, and I found it fun. Being entrepreneurial is really, it's about being creative, and it's about being quite generalist in something, which is very different to, say, being a professional, where being a professional is about being very focused on something and, you know, potentially narrows the ability for you to be creative and to do different skills at different times. So yeah, like I said, I don't know if I was destined, but I certainly was entrepreneurial from a very young age.
And were you academic at school? Were you good model student? How would you describe your time growing up through school?
I mean, what does academic mean today? I'm very literate and I'm very good at numbers. My dad and his father were both accountants, and so I would help out at the shop sometimes. My mum is very arty and into books and literature and what have you. And so my mum made my brother and I read 4 books a week from as young as I can remember from the local library, Coppice Avenue Library. And the deal was that if we took up, you were allowed to take 4 books each out. And if you took 4 books out, if we read them through and gave mum a book review on each of them, then the following Wednesday when we would go back to the library, we'd get to go for a McDonald's afterwards. And mum hated McDonald's, but obviously being young kids, we loved it. So she incentivized us into being voracious readers from a very young age by offering us something that she hated and we loved, which was McDonald's. And in fact, my brother used to read all 4 of my books as well. So he was reading 8 books a week. And I think that when you read a lot, I think it expands your hippocampus and your ability to remember things, and it gives you a better register in terms of vocabulary and your communication skills, and it gives you a different type of confidence in life. So when I was in school, I was good at exams. I could pass anything, but I was not a model student. I was a cheeky chappy. I wanted to do things my way. I was a big procrastinator as well, so naturally lazy. I would only work when I absolutely needed to work. I remember a school report from one of my masters. I think it was in the years of my GCSEs, and it said in the report, Zac is the last minute man, and then full stop, and then in capital letters, the last minute is now. And I went on to do GCSEs, and so in my exams, I got A's in everything. It did work, and frankly, it still works today for me. There are people that plan and bite-size do everything and spread their workload out and all the rest of it. I am someone that responds extremely well to pressure. And so that's how I naturally saw my life, my work life. It's sort of, if you think about it, it's a form of prioritization. It's just natural prioritization.
So you've grown up in a very sort of literate and numerical kind of household. So a nice even balance. You've gone through school. Whilst you weren't destined to be entrepreneurial, your actions, I think, say otherwise in terms of sort of those early years. Done well at GCSE, I assume, straight into A levels. Similar story.
Yeah.
Lastminute.com, but did quite well. What did you pick for A levels? Was there an equal split in terms of, maths and English following on from your parents? Or
I did history, art, politics, and maths.
It really is the split, both sides.
Massively so. At my core, I'm quite hyper rational about things, very comfortable in a spreadsheet, can have a bit of an engineer's mindset about things, but at the same time, very affected by the aesthetic of things, design, layout of stuff. And that's why, to be honest, property suits me very well, because I think property is both a left and right brain industry. I think if I was really to indulge myself, I'd be much more on the creative side all of the time. I love marketing. I love working with architects and designers, laying out a brochure, thinking of ways to be creative. But obviously, unfortunately, like with anything, these things have to make money. You have to be good at the other side of things, financing,
I think that creativity
modeling
is very much reflected in your, call it, persona that comes across on LinkedIn or social media. It is a very creative, I always look forward to those popping up on our feed. So did well at A-level. Talk to me then about the choice for further education at uni and what you went on to study, because knowing what I know previously in terms of the way that you've grown up and what you've done and what you enjoy entrepreneurial, I would have thought that the course that you chose at uni feels perhaps, to me, not the obvious choice. But what was going through your mind then about that?
So I wanted to be an architect, and I was dissuaded by my father and actually quite a lot of people around me at the time, because it was the turn of the millennium, sort of the year 2000-ish, when I started my A-levels. And the view, I was really into art and what have you. The view was that architecture was an incredibly difficult profession to get into and quite a thankless profession once you got into it. It took, I think, 7 years in total to get qualified. CAD was coming in, computer automated design, and I think the view was that was going to have a negative impact on the profession. I mean, this was all turned out to be completely wrong, by the way. And so I remember I'd gone up to Edinburgh I was a big fan of Charles Rennie Mackintosh, and I went to see the museum of him, and I had my head turned. And so for me, actually, my parents had got divorced. I was not very happy in Manchester. And so the view was actually for me, university was just about getting away. And I had to take a year out, go make some money and get myself financially ready to go to university. And I decided to apply for politics. And the reason was I absolutely loved the subject, loved it, and I excelled in it. It was the strongest A-level by far. I got straight A's, but politics, I got near 100% in the exams. And my politics master had two, a guy called Rod Martin, who sadly died, Hot Rod, and another guy called Richard Kelly, who's still around. When you have good teachers and they just inspire
Makes all the difference.
you. And I looked forward to going to every lesson. I found politics fascinating because politics is sort of the study of history, the study of power, the study of the world and culture. And I loved every single aspect of it. And so the school that I went to, Manchester Grammar, which was pretty much the best school in the north. And this was back in the days when I had an assisted place. So the government paid for me to go to school. And it's one of those schools that believed in classics. So either you were going to go and be a doctor, you're going to go and be an engineer. And if you weren't going to go do those things, then go and take a classic subject and do well in it. And so I chose to do politics. I applied for Cambridge. You had to do a book review for the interview. I applied for Queen's College, Cambridge for social and political sciences. You had to do a book review for the interview. And I stupidly book reviewed Margaret Thatcher because after my study of politics, I was quite enamored by the change that she had made in society. Of course, there's huge costs to that change. And being in the North, I was very aware of the impact it had on communities and what have you. But I think in my book review, I came out more positively in favour of the outcomes that came from her taking over in the 80s from what we had in the UK in the 70s, really understanding that university is quite a left-wing environment. And so I didn't get a place at Cambridge. I'm sure there was other reasons why as well. And so I chose Nottingham because it had a 6-to-1 ratio of girls to boys. And I wanted to make sure that I could stack the odds in my favour to be successful with the opposite sex. It was a beautiful campus.
I wonder what you were going to say then. And you had a good time. So it's in terms of then, so it's 2002 to 2005, I think, was your uni days. Was that living in Nottingham, full-time course, no sandwich year, head down, studying, well, as such?
Correct. So it's a 3-year course, bachelor's, lived on campus in the first year in halls of residence. And then in the second and third year, you lived in these little terraced streets that were very near to campus. And it was, obviously the world of students is changing if you look at PBSA and everything, but it was the with nail and eye model that probably dates me as well. But you all squeezed into these little terrace houses, ate pot noodles, watched Neighbours at lunchtime, the midday showing, walked onto campus with a local pub where we all ended up in. And it was a very, very classic British university experience. I built a business while I was there. I met a friend in a lecture I still do business with him today. We partner on loads of things. And I was running a marketing company on my own. So I'd noticed basically that all of the clubs and nights were flyering on the campus. Come to our night, get a free shot, whatever it might be. And I looked at it and I was like, every club is hiring separate people to do their flyering. And they're all just stood up in a row outside the library. And you'd walk out of the library and everyone would hand you another flyer and another flyer and another flyer. And so I spoke to all of these people that were handing out the flyers. I was like, how much are you getting paid to do this? And they were like, oh, it's really good. We're getting paid £8 an hour to do this. And that's back then, that was really good money. I think minimum wage money. Was probably £3 an hour.
And a pint was 50p,
Exactly. So I came up with the idea of, why do you need 7 different people being paid £8 an hour to hand out flyers for every club? So I then went round to all of the clubs in town, spoke to them and basically said, I will do all of your flyering for you. I think it was for £4 an hour. And they were like, hey? I said, yeah, I'll do it all for £4 an hour. And my model was very simple. I think I got 6 of them signed up. So the 6 of them were paying me £24 an hour. And then I went to the people flying on campus, picked the people that I wanted, and basically said, I'll pay you £10 an hour to fly for me so that I could guarantee it. And so basically ran a bit of a sort of flyering distribution agency where I was making £14 an hour on top of everyone there. So
100% plus margin.
And I had free entrance to all of the clubs and I could invite friends. I got VIP privileges and all the rest of it. And so I called it Ziggy Promotions because my mum was a big fan of David Bowie. And then basically that led to teaming up with another friend who was actually running a club night, promoting the night. And I ended up having a share in that. And then my friend who I'm still in business with today came in and said, I've got a night, it's really struggling. I can't get people to it. And I've heard you're the guy that can bring people in. And so he saw what I was doing, was impressed and said, well, how about we go partners on all of this? I said, okay. And then before we knew it, we were running several nights a week in the university, but the team working for us. And so, yeah, I just had a brilliant, brilliant time at uni. And we sold the business on to some people in the year below us when we left.
There was money involved in that selling of a business to the guys, coming up through uni.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
I mean, that business, it's called After Dark, didn't just pay for my education. It paid for several people's education. Like we had DJs that worked for us for years there every week, guaranteed. It was a serious business. It was a limited company. It was a proper business. We had board meetings. Like we treated it, as you should.
Treated it seriously. So again, an extension of your, entrepreneurial journey from right the way through, carried on at uni. We're finishing uni, and correct me if I'm wrong, up until this point, there is still no hint yet of real estate. There is no foray into property. There is, or is there stuff in the background? So you're still very much, I say, a man about town in Nottingham, finishing uni. Talk to me then about, so finishing up, obviously you and your peers are thinking, right, time to get serious, time to go get a big boy job. What was running through your mind at that sort of time? Because obviously you had it pretty good where you were. Was there conversations about kind of graduating but carrying on with After Dark? and sticking with what you were doing?
Yeah, so my partner and I had quite in-depth conversations about that. Like, what would this look like if we grew the business? And it's funny, we always wonder because we looked at it seriously. Like, we kind of said, like, which way would you go with this business? Would you go into more club promoting, different geographies? Would you move into actually being sort of, involved in the premises side of things, festivals? And at the time, festivals weren't that big. And actually, it was probably a big miss for us because sort of in the years that then followed, festivals became enormous. So sort of at that time, there weren't that many festivals. There was like Creamfields, and obviously there was Glastonbury, and there was bits and bobs, but they were very, very big. I think we both decided that one, we didn't want to stay in Nottingham. Like, there was this huge flow through to London. It was just, everybody was going to London. And two, I think we both felt like there was still things that we wanted to learn and go and acquire some experience and what have you. But we didn't treat it flippantly. Like, we seriously considered continuing doing what we were doing. We were good at it. We enjoyed working with each other. We had fun. There's a freedom and autonomy with running your own business that is very, very hard to accomplish in an employed setting.
That leads me on to then the complete opposite, Goldman Sachs.
Yeah. So
how did that come about?
I didn't know what I was going to do after uni, and I didn't know what my plan in life was going to be. I wasn't brought up in an environment where it's like, Zach, you're going to go and do a degree and then be a doctor or be a this or be a that. Like, for better or for worse, my parents they never even really discussed career with me. It was always assumed in our family, we're a Jewish family, and you need to succeed at something. That is just in our DNA. Simple as that. At the time, growing up in Manchester, there wasn't this big corporate setting in Manchester. Most people bought stuff, sold stuff, stole stuff. I didn't have many friends where their parents were like partners in law firms. You didn't have global banks in Manchester. It was still a sort of fast gentrifying city, but with a very industrial and trading heritage. I'd made all of these quite fancy middle class friends in university, come from London, much more sophisticated than me. And I said to them all, like, what are you all doing? And they were like, grad schemes. And I'd not done this was by third year. I hadn't done internships, wasn't interested, didn't know what any of these businesses really did. And so I decided, like, this was a ticket to get down to London. You get a job from uni to London. So I said to a friend, so what's the highest paying grad scheme? That was my only measure. And he was like, well, banking, Goldman Sachs. And he went to me, but I wouldn't bother applying there if I were you. You're not for them. And so that was like red rag to up. I was like, what's this all about? So I went home.
Challenge accepted.
Pulled up the website, Goldman Sachs, global banking, or didn't understand a word on it. And then just went to the application page, and it was, boxes, put 100 words here, 200 words there. Didn't really know how to answer the question. So I just started writing. I said, hello, my name is Zac Goodman. I've just been told by a very good friend that knows me well that I shouldn't even bother applying here. But what I'm going to do is just tell you what I'm about, what my story is, what I've done. And if you like me, let's talk. And so literally, and I talked about growing up, the entrepreneurialism, the business that I was running, what I thought about politics. I just wrote.
Just an honest account of you.
Just ignoring
today.
The questions, just through the boxes, basically just wrote why I thought I was a valuable person. And got invited to an interview. And it was famous, their interview process. I ended up having 22 interviews, and they put me in the foreign exchange department, and much disbelief of all of my friends. They were like, they couldn't really get their head around it. I mean, and I think to just cushion this as well, this was a time where it was probably 5 years after they'd IPO'd. They were growing. It was the boom in the lead up to the bust. So I think if there was ever a time to kind of take a flyer at something and maybe have a heightened chance of getting lucky, of getting in somewhere, that was that time. And so I joined there, went to New York first for orientation and what have you, came back, got sent to live in India for a year, came back. And I think in my fourth year, and it was miserable. And my friend who had started the business with, he'd gone into sort of like private equity. His dad had managed to get him a position at a company in London. He was having a good time there. And I'd kind of been in this bubble for 4 years at Goldman, sort of the corporate world and what have you. Had an amazing time, like flew business class for the first time ever, living abroad, making lots of money, like crazy money, really, for someone of my age. And, enjoying everything that came with that. But I was unhappy by 4 years because I'd kind of done it. I could see what the future was in a career there, and all the rest of it was nothing like what I wanted. I hated this concept of holiday days, and I had to ask someone when I wanted to go do something and what have you. And
I would have thought, the whole thing was very much in contrast to your entrepreneurial spirit that you'd clearly had and demonstrated since you were at school.
I think to give credit to Goldman, it's a very entrepreneurial place and it's a very meritocratic place. So if you are going to work somewhere, have an entrepreneurial spirit, I would say, I don't know about it now because I was there nearly 20 years ago, but I'd say that it was probably the best company to work for if you were an entrepreneur. It was a place that encouraged you to take risk. It was a place that accepted that you might not be there long term, but you might, I remember them saying 40% of their clientele were Goldman's alumni, as in you go start your career there, go and do a business, start a hedge fund, whatever it might be, and then come back to base in one form or another. But it was just, I could see where it was going, and I could see what it looked like to progress in this place, which was just going up through a political structure, battling for resources, infighting, jostling for position, all that kind of. It just didn't interest me at all, just not for me. And so I left. My friend bought me 2 books, Who Moved My Cheese and The 1 Minute Manager. And he said, you are not born to be a corporate guy. Quit your job and get on with it. Now, if you think about that, it's a very good friend to say that to someone, because it's like quit an amazing job, an amazing company with incredible prospects and go do something else. And it means you really have to care about that person and know who they are and know that
Absolutely.
They can handle that. And so I did that, and all my friends and my parents thought I was absolutely mad. I had another friend at the time it was 2009, and actually through the credit crunch, the bank did very well. So we all got paid quite generously.
A quick 15-second pause in today's content to tell you about the amazing work we do at Fidgens. We're a small but powerful team of cost consultants based on Oxford Street and focused on the London commercial sector. We help project managers and end users successfully deliver a vision for their projects. For our smaller schemes, 10,000 square foot and upwards, we offer a neat one-stop solution covering PM, CM and EA roles, which is particularly well suited for fast-paced, budget-constrained projects. We also work with a range of brilliant project managers on larger office fit-outs where we solely provide cost management services. These currently include 2 exciting large occupier schemes, both with build costs in excess of 20 million. Whether you're an end user, an asset manager or a project manager, our only rule is that you're nice to work with, because life's too short to not enjoy your day job. So if you want to find out how we do things differently, send me a message on LinkedIn and we can have a chat. Now, back to the show.
And so I had a moment to be able to say, do you know what? I can quit a couple of years, money in the bank. I lived with a friend from uni who had his own flat, and I rented from him. And he's now the godfather to my daughter, actually. He's a great guy. And I remember when I quit, the first thing I did was paid him 2 years rent up front and just said, I want to get it out of the way and done. So that felt like, okay, I've got this stable place, I'm okay, and all the rest of it, and I could just focus on what is going to be now. I had another friend that I met at a party, I've known him since I was a kid. He was working for a property business that was going in a big way, £1 billion or something, and he was like, I'm screwed, I'm getting married, this company's dead in the water, I'm going to go and try and do something myself. And I remember we were having like a cigarette in this flat. And that was what life was like. I think I'm a big believer in serendipity. Like things
see an opportunity, take it.
Yeah, but whatever you decide to do at the time, but I believe that really is how the world kind of works. I know some people guide you to plan everything out and set a goal for this and set a goal for that. Okay, those are tools you can use. Also accept that in the cosmos of the universe, some things will just randomly drop in front of you and you should probably go for them. And so that was how TSP came into being.
So what was that sort of, I'm going to call it pitch almost? You might be standing outside a party having a fag, but it was an exchange, a conversation, an idea. Up until that point, you still have no, I'm going to say, unique property-related skill set or knowledge, or had you been acquiring stuff in the background?
No,
so literally it was just a case of...
None at all. None at all.
So what was the initial concept then of a TSP at point in time?
The concept was simple. Interest rates had fallen to basically zero. Property prices had crashed dramatically. There was a unique opportunity to effectively buy real estate almost with a guaranteed knowledge that it was going to go back up in value, because very different to the market that we have today. But if asset values drop, but then the cost of capital also drops, I mean, the laws of physics are that you will have a reflation. It's not guaranteed that reflation will happen quickly, because something similar happened in Japan in the 90s and in some ways hasn't reflated yet, and it's had low interest rates for 30 years. But Japan had a very different demography in their country. They were an older country, lots more retirees within the economy. They had a big productivity problem. Whereas in the UK, you looked at it and you had this huge generation coming through, big population, very stringent planning laws, a structural shortage of housing supply. It was very clear to me that, this was the time of WhatsApp starting, Uber starting, all of these technology businesses. It was going through
opportunity.
Technology was going through its second wind, and it was coming to our shores. And so I still use the phrase now, but the Mark Twain phrase, buy land, they ain't making any more of it. And so really it wasn't a property view. It was a macro view, an economic view that this is a huge opportunity. And actually during those years when we were trying to get going, a lot of the big incumbent property players were too busy negotiating with banks. They had their head in the sand. They were dealing with all their bad assets and what have you. And so those moments in an economy, and I would argue it's quite similar now, are an incredible opportunity for a new actor to enter into a marketplace and what have you, and do stuff. And so the idea was to buy properties, make money. So we went around, found deals, went to a load of different investors, said, will you back us? And they all said no, because you're 25. We've just had a huge global crash. Why on earth am I going to give you money? And that was a bit deflating. And so we had to pivot. And so my friend suggested we should look at charities. He had been in a retail property business, and he said, in every sector you've got a specialist, agent, and people that work on industrial or retail. He goes, I've never seen anyone do this on charities, and there's loads of charities. And so I said, well, let's look at the numbers. And so the first question was, how many charities are there in the UK? And I think at the time there was 170,000 registered charities. Okay, wow, that's a big number. Let's start looking at this. And you start looking at the charity sector, and there's schools, there's retailers, there's cause organizations like parades for cancer, for this, for that. There's religious organizations, there's associations for professional memberships, there's, you name it. It's the entire sort of makeup of society in this third sector. And the other really interesting thing about charities is that they don't really have debt. So in an economic crash, things get hard for them. It can be hard for them to raise money and what have you, but it's not as hard for them as it is for everybody else. And so that makes them quite a strong tenant to have in society. And so then we started looking at where's the arbitrage opportunity. I was always coming out of banking. It was always like, where's the arbitrage? Where's the mispricing in the market? Yeah. And so the thing that was glaring us in the face at the time was the high street. It was there was a big issue with high street vacancy. I think most high streets outside of the city centre of London were 30% vacant. And so you'd go down a high street and basically there'd be 2-3 betting shops and 4 or 5 charity shops, and everyone, and maybe a Co-op or a Tesco's, and everyone else, and it was empty. And so you're looking at all these charity shops and you're thinking to yourself, whatever rent they're paying, they could just go next door and ask for a lease and basically pay nothing, and the landlord would take them just to get out of their property cost. So we came up with a model for charities where we reached out to them and said, we think we can save you money on your property costs, and we'd be happy to work for you on a contingent basis, so no win, no fee basis. And so we just yellow pages, we had a tiny little office, hit the phones, wrote some letters, and 9 months in, we got in with Bernardo's. The guy at the Bernardo's said to us, I'm going to negotiate down your fees because the value you'll get out of being able to say that you've worked for Bernardo's will be huge for you. And he was right. And the doors just went open. And so we started off negotiating down rents. That very quickly led to, can you do a rent review for us? My partner at the time knew a lot more about these things. We got into dilapidations, lease renewals, lease re-gears, finding new property.
Evolving into a tenant advisory business almost.
That's exactly what it was, property management. And so we started hiring people, and we hired, and the guy who is still our MD today, Jonathan Vanstone Walker, we hired him. And we basically said to him, look, we've got a really good business. And we sort of showed him our client list, the work that we were doing, the pipeline. But neither of us were chartered surveyors, and we'd been trading on our wits and our negotiation skills more than anything else. And we said, we want you to build out a professional practice for us. And you know, at that time we were starting to get major contracts. Like I think when we hired Jonathan, we just won a contract to manage 90 properties for a charity nationwide. And every year the business was sort of tripling, quadrupling. It was, you know, those early years of growth. And so we did that, and we were well on our way.
So that was launched in '09.
Yeah, so you're
I
talking
think.
about between '09 and 12 probably was this sort of meteoric growth.
So then, okay, so that's a quick 3 years for you guys. Exponential
Mm.
growth out of your depth to a certain degree, but I'm sure loving it.
Completely out of our depth.
Willing to acknowledge what you don't know and the lack of skills that you had, hence trying to bring someone in to create a professional agency.
Have a self-confidence that you can acquire those skills, whether it's by learning yourself or by hiring people, by just asking people for help. I remember I took on my first dilapidations case, and there's a purple book on dilapidations, and I just read it and I was like, right, I'm now a dilapidations master. And I went and negotiated it. Actually, it was lovely. About 2-3 years ago, I had a very difficult dilapidations on one of the buildings that I owned, and the tenant was playing hardball. So I was like, I need to hire, best of the best. And I brought in the guy that wrote the purple book because I thought to myself, like, who better?
Who better to go to?
The guy that wrote the book on it, defending you. So I got to meet him and work with him, and he was brilliant.
So at that time then, so we're sort of 3 or 4 years in, team size wise?
We probably got to about 10.
Did you have a vision for the business at that point in time? Did you know, how you wanted to evolve it over the next 10 years, or as you say?
No, we were treating the advisory business very much as a lifestyle business. We wanted to be property investors. About 3 years in, we actually found our first deal to buy Pear Tree Court, and we had some of our own money by then. We'd made money in the business. And so we went around to investors, and we think we got 7 investors with us, and we bought Pear Tree Court. And that was the beginning of kind of our property investment side of the business, where we were sponsoring deals, finding the deals, putting some money in ourselves, bringing in co-investors, structuring them, rolling out an asset management strategy, and then trading the assets off. And so we did that first deal in 9 months, turned around a whopping profit, 80-odd%. From that point on, we really focused on doing more investment deals because it was much bigger money, and you could see how you could scale it. It's just buy a building for 2 million, sell it for 4 million, buy a building for 4 million, sell it for 8 million, buy a building for 8 million, sell it for, and it just eventually we were buying skyscrapers in our heads.
But that was your vision and your business plan.
Yeah, in short. And TSP was just this great sort of cash cow on the side that was like a little bit of a snowball that kind of just rolled up and got bigger and bigger every year. We didn't have some grand plan on how to grow it. It was just growing. And, it started to get good. And so we were getting referred a lot of business, and it was kind of just walking itself in through the door. And so in 2017, I'd come up with an idea, and I thought, gosh, TSP really runs itself very well. I'm not very involved in the day-to-day of it. And I'd helped design the systems and processes, particularly behind our management business. And so I thought, how can I scale this? Like, what's the arbitrage? And I thought, I'm going to go and buy loads of small residential lettings businesses around the country. And I'm going to buy them, and I'm going to strip out their back office, and I'm going to run it all out of London with TSP's finance systems and all the rest of it. And I was like, this is a no-brainer. And I went and bought the first one in Cheltenham in 2017. And I've never done residential lettings. I've never even managed a residential building. This is how an idiot operates. But I thought there's a rationale for this. And you could buy them quite low cost, these businesses. You could buy a business for 250, 300K. So I bought one, paid the wrong price for it, tried to integrate it, basically shuttered it after about 2 years. It was a disaster. Broke every rule in the book of how to acquire a business and make it work. And I think after that, TSP had still continued to grow irrespective of that, because we were building cash flows within TSP. So it was kind of like, what do we do with them? How can we invest into the business? We just didn't know how. So I had this idea to do it. And all the while we were still buying more investments, doing more of the asset management stuff. And so again, I kind of just left it alone after that and let it just continue to grow. And by the time we got to the pandemic, it had actually become quite a significant business that we didn't really market or advertise, that we didn't really have any kind of proper growth plan for, and what have you. I guess we just said to the management, like, just grow it, make more money, please. And so we had a bit of an agency department there. We had a professional department. We had property management. We had a small residential team as well. And what was this business? What was its niche? What was it doing? When the pandemic struck, I think we had about £100 million worth of investments. And that was obviously a very scary time. It's like, what do I do here? I own a load of central London offices and no one's allowed to go into town, and we've got huge debts on them and all the rest of it. And so I was looking across all of our assets, balance sheets, looking at our cash flows, just trying to work out what's going on. I was looking at TSP, and when I was looking at like sort of the historic cash flows of the business, I was like, this is an amazing business. And I think what makes it amazing was the property management, which is one, the customer lifetime value is huge. Two, it's a positive cash flow business in the respect that property manager actually paid in advance of delivering their services, not in arrears. So consultants pretty much work on account the whole time. So in effect, you're lending your clients money when you do work for them, and you have to pay to operate your business, pay your salaries and all the rest of it. And they'll pay you down the line when you finish the work and your payment terms expire. That's not the case in property management. Rent gets paid in advance to landlords, and therefore your fees get paid at the same time. And I was like, we need to grow this management business. You know, it's systems, it's scalable, it's logical. And also because we've been buying and developing our own stock, we developed a certain style of management that was a differentiated offering to the rest of the market. We were much less about the pure utility and functionality of what property management does, but actually using it as almost a slightly more asset management style, sort of bringing in hospitality, tenant engagement, being involved in the marketing, being involved in the design. We were very, very strong on sustainability very early. And I think we were delivering a good product, and we had really good occupancy across our managed portfolios. And so I had an interesting year in the pandemic because I had the investment portfolio to kind of really deal with and work through, which we did. The management business was put under strain, not financially, it was put under strain because of COVID. And when you're the property manager, you suddenly have to get all of these buildings safe for COVID. And there was a huge amount of professional work on the side, side letter agreement. Yeah, it was, but the team handled it incredibly well. And it made me realize, you know, I've got Abigail Burt, who's been running property management side of the business for probably about 5-6 years now, but she's been with me for 12 years, you know, really, really solid, knew what she was doing the whole way through it. At the same time, my business partner turned around to me and decided that he wanted to exit the business. He'd had a life-changing family event happen, sadly. Someone had passed in his family, and he wanted to change path. And so we had the pandemic. I bought out my long-term business partner, and I wanted to rip apart the TSP model and repoint it purely towards asset and property management all at the same time. And so how do you sit there and work out how you're going to do all of this stuff?
So presumably you're sitting at home during COVID, mulling all this over, kind of itching to get back to it and implement the vision that you were coming up with.
Yeah, you make me sound very stylish by that, like sort of mulling it over. But in reality,
it was COVID,
I was going through different patches of like panic, despair, hope, anxiety, probably all of it. But we'll call it mulling for artistic
all while
license.
sipping on a gin and tonic at 11:30 in the morning.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, I pulled the management team together. So I've got a lot of long-term people at our business. I've worked very hard to create a company and a culture that keeps people for a long time. And I said to them, look, this is where we're at. This is what I want to do. And we started planning out, like, what would this business look like and how would we get there? And it was a big list of things that we needed to do. And there was a lot of stars that needed to align. And this was going to be years of work. And this was the first time that we'd really planned the business and what we wanted to do. And it would involve moving some people on. It would involve bringing some new people in, changing job roles, going for B Corp, bringing in a marketing function, which we didn't have in the business, phasing off our agency business, building a more robust platform to handle scale within our management business. And also it resulted in us needing to fire about 20% of our clientele who we felt were not going to fit in with the type of management service that we wanted to deliver, and that were never going to value what we do, and effectively were demoralizing and demotivating our workforce. So there was a lot to do
with where you wanted to take the business and your team.
Yeah, I think you get to a point when you've been running your business where you spend, you know, as we did the first 13 years, just taking anything you can get, which invariably leads to what I call bottom feeding. which is you end up picking up a lot of instructions, clients, and mandates that, frankly, not because you're so great at winning business, but nobody else wants, and so they're kind of there to take. And so we needed one of my executives called it burning the grass, the strategy. So that's what we did, and we started this strategy in sort of 2020. 2021, the market came back alive. Our investment portfolio, we leased that whole thing out. Slowly started building up new clientele into the management business. 2022, that really started to accelerate. And I think the trend of needing more amenable office spaces with hospitality and all of those things. And people had seen our own projects were winning awards and were, gaining notoriety for the prices that we were achieving, the rents we were achieving, the terms that we were getting things away on, the speed in which we were doing things, and how we were, our management style was starting to shine through with what we're doing, because we were able to offer, managed space directly as the landlord. And so, 2022 was what I would say the grass shoots of growth. Last year was a really strong year for growth for us on asset management and property management. We started to notice like the instructions got bigger, the buildings got bigger. We used to be sort of the company that would always pick up 20, 30,000 square foot buildings. Now people are coming to us with 50, 60, 70,000 feet, coming to us with estates, more prestigious clients and what have you. And so that got exciting, but it was a little bit like lumpy. Like sometimes we'd go through patches where we'd win 5 mandates in a month, and sometimes we'd go through a month where we won nothing. And then this year, it's gone to an entirely different level for us, in the sense that we're pushing really hard to get our message out there, to reach out to people, to network, to build our referral network, to sort of we're starting to try and knock down the door and be very proactive in terms of winning business. And I think we're doing that at a time where there is a genuine need for what we're offering. And, we will, if things go to plan, we'll probably double the size of the business over the next 12 to 18 months as a result. So despite the fact that sort of if you look at the investment side of our business, it's a really challenging, torrid time with a high cost of capital, high build costs, difficult political, financial, cultural moment in time. But then on this little property management business, it's just
the
so
lifestyle business.
It's no longer a lifestyle business. This is the business that I want to grow into a great British company. I think we're in the right time and place. I think we're the right size. I think we've got the right experience, and I think we've got a very good product that's incredibly difficult for someone else to replicate quickly.
It enables you, as TSP, to be a very patient investor. You've got a really profitable, something exciting to focus on in terms of your management and asset management business. The investment side will come back, but you won't be you don't need to be in a rush to do it because you've got other things going on.
Correct. And I think that's actually historically always been the advantage that having a cash flow business like TSP had given me, which was that, sometimes it's a good time to buy and sometimes it's not. And if you don't have a cash flow business and you're dependent on revenues that you earn from acquiring assets, you will buy the wrong assets at the wrong time at the wrong price. But I have an expression, it's on my LinkedIn profile, and I've used it for a long time, which is, it's a long game. And I think when you get into property, certainly for me, coming in from banking, you just look at it as a younger person and think, I can do this faster and I can be more disruptive and I'll get in and I'll break things and all the rest of it. Some have done it. Many have tried it. But I'm a believer that one of the greatest things about real estate is that you can have a whole life career in it. We have worked with people, done deals with people that are 90 years old. It's like cycling. You can just do it for a really, really long time. Very hard to be a bank trader or a surgeon when you're 90 years old and what have you. Real estate's an industry where you can have purpose in it for the whole of your life. And so if you kind of know that those are the parameters that you're working in, you don't need to be in such a rush. And I think as I've got older, I've got a little bit better about realizing this, and actually that you end up moving faster by moving slower. You start to try and enjoy the journey a little bit more, which is definitely my goal I'm 40 now this year. My goal over the next 10 years is to try and enjoy myself while I'm doing this, because I can't honestly say I've always done that in business to this point.
I was trying to think whilst you were talking through that about, a nice way to draw the episode to a close, sort of an organic finish. But I think in actual fact, you've done that by yourself. I think that was a really nice way to sort of bring this to a conclusion. Really enjoyed today, Zac. Really enjoyed it.
Good.
If anyone that wants to reach out, we'll put you all over the internet. But for anyone that wants to know, we'll put your LinkedIn profile.
Yeah, I've been on a 2-week fast from LinkedIn. I'll be back on next week, I think. I think that's how I operate in life. I've been on a sprint for about 90 days. Wanted to take 2 weeks off, but I'll probably come back for another 90 days and then do it again.
I look forward to the inspirational quotes that are sure to follow. But thanks ever so much for coming on.
There will be many.
Speak soon. Thanks, Zac.
Pleasure.
This podcast is sponsored by Fidgins, a London-based cost consultancy. Please visit fidgins.co.uk to find out more about our market-leading service and some of the amazing clients we get to work with. We're super open to guest recommendations for this podcast, so if there's anyone in the industry you'd like to get on the show, please visit the website or send me a message on LinkedIn and I'll try to make it happen. Thanks and bye for now.